An unlikely pair. Zoloth hurried through the bustling halls of the Galactic Academy, her lavender skin flushed with exertion. As a top student in the prestigious Canobiology program, she was used to the pressures of academic life. However, today's stress was compounded by the fact that she was running late for her first meeting with her new project partner. She burst into the lab, breathless and apologetic. "I'm so sorry for being late. I got caught up in..." She stopped short as she caught sight of her partner, a tall and muscular male with warm brown skin and piercing blue eyes. He was unlike any species she had encountered before. The stranger smiled and extended his hand. "No worries, I just got here myself. I'm Jace, the new transfer student from Earth." Zoloth tentatively shook his hand, marveling at the warmth and strength of his grip. "I'm Zoloth, nice to meet you. I have to admit, I've never met a human before." Jace chuckled. "Well, I've never met her." He trailed off, gesturing vaguely at Zoloth's slender, lilac form. "Zathian," she supplied, amused by his fascination. "I come from a planet called Zathus Prime." Jace's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Incredible. I can't wait to learn more about your species, and your xenobiology program, of course." Zoloth felt a flutter of excitement in her stomach. She had always been fascinated by the diversity of life in the universe, and the chance to work closely with an exotic new species was thrilling. However, as they began to discuss their assigned project, a comparative analysis of reproductive systems across the galaxy, she felt a creeping sense of unease. The humans were a relatively new addition to the Galactic Federation, and opinions were divided on their role in the cosmic community. Some saw them as brave pioneers, boldly exploring and colonizing new worlds. Others viewed them as reckless upstarts, blundering through the delicate balance of interstellar diplomacy. As Zoloth listened to Jace passionately describe his people's drive to understand and connect with other species, she couldn't help but be impressed by his intelligence and enthusiasm. At the same time, she was acutely aware of the physical differences between them: the sheer size and strength of his frame, the alien symmetry of his features. Working in close quarters with a human, especially one as charismatic as Jace, was going to be a challenge. Zoloth silently vowed to maintain a professional distance, focusing on the intellectual rigors of their shared project. But as the hours ticked by and they fell into an easy rhythm of conversation and collaboration, she found herself drawn to Jace's quick wit and insatiable curiosity. He seemed genuinely interested in her perspectives and experiences, listening attentively as she described the intricacies of Zathian biology. By the time they called it a night, Zoloth was surprised to find that her initial reservations had melted away. Jace might be an alien, but he was also a brilliant scientist and a willing partner in the search for knowledge. As they parted ways, Jace flashed her a warm smile. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked hopefully. Zoloth found herself returning the smile, her heart racing with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. "Absolutely," she agreed. "I have a feeling this project is going to be full of surprises." Little did she know just how prophetic those words would prove to be. As Zoloth drifted off to sleep that night, her dreams were haunted by piercing blue eyes and the lingering warmth of a human touch. Forbidden fruit. As the weeks flew by, Zoloth and Jace found themselves spending more and more time together in the xenobiology lab. What had started as a purely academic partnership quickly blossomed into a deep and unexpected friendship. Late one night, as they pored over a particularly tricky set of genetic simulations, Jace stretched and yawned. "I could really use a break," he admitted. "Want to grab a bite to eat?" Zoloth hesitated. Social fraternization between students was not explicitly forbidden, but it was definitely frowned upon, especially when those students were from different species. But as she looked into Jace's hopeful eyes, she found herself nodding. "Sure, why not? I know a great place just off campus." As they walked through the quiet streets, Zoloth found herself opening up to Jace in ways she never had before. She told him about growing up on Zathus Prime, about the pressure she felt to excel in her studies and bring honor to her family. In turn, Jace shared stories of his own childhood on Earth, the endless blue skies, the vast oceans, the incredible diversity of life. He spoke of his people's insatiable curiosity, their drive to explore and understand the universe around them. Under the twin moons of the Academy's host planet, Zoloth felt a strange and exhilarating sense of connection to this alien being. It was as if the barriers of species and culture had melted away, leaving only two kindred spirits bound by a shared passion for knowledge. As they lingered over their meal, the conversation turned to more personal matters. Jace admitted that he sometimes felt lonely and isolated at the Academy, surrounded by beings so different from himself. Zoloth found herself reaching out to take his hand, marveling at the roughness of his skin and the strength of his fingers. "You're not alone," she murmured. "You have me." Jace's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with gratitude. "Thank you, Zoloth. That means more than you know." As they made their way back to the lab, Zoloth's mind was racing. She knew that she was treading on dangerous ground, but the connection between them was growing stronger and more complicated with each passing day. But as they settled back into their work, falling into the familiar rhythm of conversation and collaboration, she couldn't bring herself to care. The joy and inspiration she felt in Jace's presence was unlike anything she had ever known. Late into the night, as they pored over a particularly fascinating set of DNA sequences, Jace leaned in close to point out a pattern. His breath was warm on Zoloth's cheek, his scent intoxicatingly alien and masculine. Without thinking, Zoloth turned her head and met his lips with her own. For a moment, the rest of the universe fell away, leaving only the electric thrill of forbidden contact. Then Jace pulled back, his eyes wide with shock and wonder. "Zoloth," he breathed. "What are we doing?" "I don't know," she admitted, "but I don't want to stop." In a rush of passion and urgency, they fell into each other's arms, all thoughts of propriety and protocol forgotten. The feel of Jace's skin against hers was intoxicating, his touch both alien and achingly familiar. As they moved together in the dim light of the lab, Zoloth felt a sense of completeness, of rightness, that she had never known before. The forbidden fruit of their desire was sweeter than anything she had ever tasted. But even as she lost herself in the heat of the moment, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered a warning. They were playing with fire, risking everything for a fleeting moment of passion. What would happen when the illicit thrill wore off? Could a human and a Zaphian ever truly be together? As Jace held her close in the afterglow, his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her cheek, Zoloth pushed those doubts aside. For now, all that mattered was the incredible, impossible connection between them. Little did she know, the consequences of their forbidden union would soon be impossible to ignore. Inside her, a new life was already taking root, a tiny, miraculous hybrid that would change the course of both their lives forever. The morning after, Zoloth awoke to the unfamiliar sensation of a warm, heavy arm draped across her waist. For a moment, she was disoriented, her mind struggling to make sense of her surroundings. Then the memories of the previous night came rushing back, and she bolted upright with a gasp. Beside her, Jace stirred and opened his eyes. "Zoloth," he mumbled sleepily, "what's wrong?" She stared at him in mute horror, the full weight of what they had done crushing down on her. "This is wrong," she whispered. "We shouldn't have." "I can't." Jace sat up, his brow furrowed with concern. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly. "We didn't do anything wrong. We just got carried away." But Zoloth was already scrambling out of the bed, hastily gathering her clothes. "You don't understand," she said frantically. "If anyone finds out about this, I'll be ruined. My family, my career, everything I've worked for." Jace reached for her, but she flinched away. "Please just let me go," she begged. "I need to think." Without waiting for a response, she fled from the room, her heart pounding and her stomach churning with a sickening mix of guilt and fear. Over the next few days, Zoloth threw herself into her work with a manic intensity. She avoided Jace at every turn, burying herself in the minutiae of that xenobiology project. If he noticed her sudden coldness, he didn't comment on it. But even as she tried to lose herself in the familiar rhythms of research and study, Zaloff couldn't shake the growing sense that something was very wrong. She was plagued by constant nausea and fatigue, and her normally trim figure had begun to take on a strange and unsettling new shape. At first, she chopped it up to stress and tried to ignore the warning signs. But when she found herself retching over the toilet for the third morning in a row, she knew she could no longer deny the truth. With trembling hands, she made her way to the medic's office and submitted to a battery of tests. And when the results came back, her worst fears were confirmed. She was pregnant, and the father was undoubtedly human. Zaloff felt the world spinning around her as the medic droned on about gestation periods and interspecies viability. This couldn't be happening. It was impossible. It was a nightmare. She stumbled out of the office in a daze, her mind reeling with the implications of her condition. What would her family say? What would her professors think? And what in the name of the cosmos was she going to tell Jace? As if summoned by her thoughts, she rounded a corner and found herself face to face with the one person she had been desperately trying to avoid. "Zaloff," Jace exclaimed, his eyes widening in surprise. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Listen, about the other night." But Zaloff cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Not here," she hissed, glancing around to make sure they were alone. "We need to talk, in private." Jace's expression turned serious and he nodded. "Of course, lead the way." With a heavy heart and a growing sense of dread, Zaloff led him to a secluded corner of the library, where she finally forced herself to meet his gaze. "Jace," he said, her voice trembling. "I'm pregnant, and it's yours." For a long moment, he simply stared at her, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Then, slowly, he reached out to take her hand. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay. We'll figure this out together. I promise." But even as he spoke the words, Zaloff could see the fear and uncertainty in his eyes, and she knew with a sinking feeling of despair that their problems were only just beginning. Revelation. In the days that followed, Zaloff found herself caught in a whirlwind of confusion and despair. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything but the tiny, impossible life growing inside her. Jace did his best to support her, but she could see the strain it was taking on him as well. He was a brilliant scientist, but nothing in his training had prepared him for the reality of an interspecies pregnancy. Finally, unable to bear the burden alone any longer, Zaloff confided in her closest friend, a fellow Zathian named Kira. "You're what?" Kira exclaimed, her violet eyes wide with shock. "How is that even possible?" Zaloff shook her head miserably. "I don't know," she admitted, "but the medic confirmed it. I'm carrying a human Zathian hybrid." Kira sat back, her brow furrowed in thought. "I've heard rumors about the humans," she said slowly. "Some say their DNA is uniquely adaptable, that they have the potential to interbreed with almost any species in the galaxy." Zaloff felt a chill run down her spine. "What does that mean for me?" she asked quietly. "For the baby?" Kira's expression softened, and she reached out to take Zaloff's hand. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I do know that you're not alone. Whatever happens, I'm here for you." Zaloff felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, and she squeezed Kira's hand gratefully. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would do without you." Armed with Kira's support and a newfound sense of determination, Zaloff tracked down Jace and dragged him into an empty classroom. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "About the baby, about us." Jace ran a hand through his hair, his expression pained. "I know," he said softly. "I've been thinking about it non-stop. But I just don't see how this can work, Zaloff. We're from two different worlds, two different species." Zaloff felt a flare of anger. "Don't you think I know that?" she snapped. "But it's too late to go back now. We made this mess together, and we need to figure out how to deal with it." Jace was silent for a long moment, his blue eyes searching her face. "You're right," he said finally. "I'm sorry. I'm scared, Zaloff. I don't know how to be a father, let alone the father of the first human Zaphian child in history. Xyloth felt her anger drain away, replaced by a deep, aching empathy. "I'm scared too," she admitted, "but we can't let fear control us. We need to be smart about this." Together, they pored over every scrap of information they could find on interspecies reproduction, medical journals, historical records, even ancient myths and legends. And as they pieced together the fragments of knowledge, a picture began to emerge. Humans, it seemed, were indeed uniquely suited to interbreeding with other species. Their DNA was incredibly resilient and adaptable, able to splice and recombine with almost any other genetic code. But what really caught Xyloth's attention was the potential benefits of such hybrids. According to some sources, the offspring of humans and other species often displayed incredible strength, intelligence, and even psychic abilities. "Jace," she said slowly, her mind racing with the implications. "Do you realize what this means? Our child could be something entirely new, entirely unprecedented in the history of the galaxy." Jace's eyes widened, and he leaned in closer. "You're right," he breathed. "But if word gets out about this pregnancy, about the potential of human hybrids, it could change everything," Xyloth finished for him. "The balance of power, the future of our species, everything." They stared at each other in silence, the weight of their realization hanging heavy in the air. They were no longer just two students caught up in a forbidden romance. They were the harbingers of a new era, the parents of a child that could alter the course of the universe itself. And as Xyloth rested her hand on the small, firm swell of her belly, she knew that she would do whatever it took to protect and nurture the miraculous life growing inside her, no matter the cost. Secret study. As the weeks passed and Xyloth's belly continued to grow, she and Jace threw themselves into their secret study with a desperate intensity. They knew that they were racing against time, that every day brought them closer to the moment when their forbidden child would be born. Under the guise of their xenobiology project, they pored over every scrap of data they could find on interspecies reproduction, trying to unravel the mysteries of their unborn hybrid. They ran countless simulations, analyzed endless strands of DNA, and even conducted clandestine scans of Xyloth's womb using stolen medical equipment. But even as they marveled at the incredible adaptability and resilience of their child's genetic code, they couldn't shake the growing sense of fear and isolation that hung over them like a dark cloud. They knew that if word of their pregnancy got out, they would be ostracized at best, and at worst, that child might be taken away and subjected to who knows what kind of experimentation and exploitation. So they kept their secret close, confiding only in Kara and a handful of trusted allies within the xenobiology department. And as Xyloth's due date drew nearer, they began to make plans for a quiet, off-the-record delivery in a remote corner of the Academy's sprawling campus. But even as they prepared for the birth of their child, they couldn't help but be drawn deeper into the tantalizing possibilities of their research. The more they learned about the potential of human-alien hybrids, the more they began to wonder if their child might be more than just a scientific curiosity, if they might be the key to unlocking a new era of galactic understanding and cooperation. Late one night, as they huddled together in their secret lab, Jace turned to Xyloth with a fierce light in his eyes. "What if we're looking at this all wrong?" he said eagerly. "What if our child isn't just a fluke, but a sign of something bigger? What if humans and aliens were meant to come together like this, to create something new and incredible?" Xyloth felt a shiver of excitement run through her. "You mean like a new species?" she breathed. "A bridge between worlds?" Jace nodded, his gaze intense. "Think about it, Xyloth. If we can prove that human hybrids are not only viable, but advantageous, stronger, smarter, more adaptable than either parent species, it could change everything. It could be the key to breaking down the barriers between cultures, to creating a truly united galaxy." Xyloth's mind raced with the possibilities. She imagined a future where humans and aliens worked side by side, their strengths and weaknesses complementing each other perfectly. She imagined a galaxy where war and conflict were a thing of the past, replaced by a new era of cooperation and discovery. And at the center of it all, she saw her child, the first of a new generation, a symbol of hope and unity for the entire universe. "We have to do this," she said firmly, taking Jace's hand in her own. "Not just for our sake, but for the sake of every species in the galaxy. We have to show them what's possible when we come together." Jace nodded, his eyes shining with determination. "Together," he agreed. "No matter what happens, we'll face it together." And so, with renewed purpose and conviction, they threw themselves into their work once more. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, fraught with danger and uncertainty at every turn. But they also knew that they had each other, and the incredible, impossible life growing inside Zaloth's womb. And as long as they had that, they could face anything the universe might throw at them. Even if it meant risking everything they had ever known, even if it meant sacrificing their own safety and happiness for the sake of a greater good, they would do whatever it took to bring their child into the world and to share the incredible potential of human-alien hybrids with the rest of the galaxy. The future was theirs to shape, and they were ready to seize it with both hands.